That the only thing we have to fear is fear itself.
Hello, and welcome back to your favorite podcast at the intersection of faith and fear, where every week, and especially this year, we are discussing what scares us in order to find what saves us. This is the fear of God. Speaking to you right now is one of your hosts, Nathan Rouse, and typically with me is fellow co-host Reed Lackey. And guys, he was here a minute ago, but he did say he had to go catch the newest episode of TJ Laser on the old DVR. I'm not caught up this season yet, so hopefully he doesn't spoil it for me. In the meantime, allow me to welcome you, listeners, back into our big series for the year, What Scares Us / What Saves Us, a series defined by you. You have been submitting your stories of films and media that instilled or stoked a certain fearful imagining in you, and we are covering them on the show right here. But I'm getting ahead of myself, as I tend to do, because here at the Fear of God, we explore. We don't explain, except for right now, when I explain that you can listen to the Fear of God at your nearest podcast platform. You can watch the Fear of God on YouTube, and you can browse the Fear of God, wherein it should be continually noted we are posting afterthoughts blog posts at thefearofgodpodcast.com. Some really good content for your spirit, for your eyes, for your souls, for all ears, where you will find other things on there, such as Reed. Hey buddy.
Afterthoughts. I read afterthoughts. They're great.
Yeah, you can do this the whole episode.
Most of it. Most of it. I'm having trouble
controlling the volume of my voice.
My tone. Years. I don't know.
Yeah.
I can't promise I won't slip into it from time to time. Hey,
you know what I love? Last week.
Yep.
We covered Never-Ending Story, which is like this, which trying to wrestle down the Never-Ending Story is like holding like a
oil in your hands.
Yeah, that's I was thinking like an amoeba, but amoebas are microscopic, so not really that, but like
holding paramecium in your hands, and you're like
a thing that can't be held well or easily. It's a never-ending story. How on earth could you wrestle that down? It never ends.
Oh my gosh,
it's endlessly thematic.
Here's what's the thing is, like, I think before our conversation last week,
Thank you, Dave Courtney.
Yes, thank you so much again, Dave, both for suggesting it and for participating in it. But like, I think before last week, I would have probably reconciled that to like, oh yeah, I love that movie. That movie's fantastic, and that would have probably been the end of it. And it's funny, I felt,
but it doesn't end.
So no, it doesn't. But it felt so big in the conversation, just some of the ideas and thoughts and concepts that it sparks in you. It to be honest, was a bit intimidating by the end of it. So I was like, wow,
absolutely.
Yeah,
well, you're making my point for me, which is last week we tried to apply a barrier to the never ending, the endlessly storied, and yet juxtapose that with this week, which is about as direct as you can get. I mean, it's like, okay, what's the never ending story about? Okay, well, there's this nothing that's coming. So is it there? Is there something there? No, it's nothing. Like, it's a nothing, but it's attacking this fantasy realm. Like, okay, the fantasy realm. Okay, so it's not in the real world. Well, it actually kind of ties the real. Like, you can go on and on. Now, okay, like this week, it's like, okay, what are you talking about? Robocop, and someone's like, well, what is that about? And then you just stare at them blankly, like, huh?
Drop it. That's you just stare at them blankly and just be like, yeah.
Let me try this again. Robocop, right? And they're like, are they still puzzled by? Did you just freeze?
No.
Oh. Man.
When I commit, I'm telling you. Once I realized what you were going for, I was like, okay, then I'll go for it.
Well, I was like, why is he frozen? We've got the right technology going on here, but man, he's just staring blankly at me. But my point is simply, there's no ambiguity here.
It's just
so yes. Sir, sir who just told me the movie you're talking about called Robocop. What is that about?
Oh, well,
it's about a robot policeman. Okay.
Yes.
Oh,
yes.
Now I get it.
Or as the tagline, as the unfortunate tagline of the film said, he's part man, part machine, all cop. That is a
Well,
really
what would be amazing is if you add one letter to that tagline. It's like part man, part machine, mall cop.
Paul Blart, Robocop.
To the typewriter.
It's
Alex
Robocop,
Murphy,
but a comic.
Mall cop.
Alex
You're
Murphy.
dead. Whoa, it was just a petty shoplifting.
You have 20 seconds to comply. I'm giving back. I gave it to you're holding it right now. You have 20
3,
seconds.
2, 1.
You're dead.
You're
Listeners don't know how when we were ramping up to this movie, you were perpetually like, "Oh yeah, I've seen that movie." He's like, "You're dead." I'm like, he never says that. He never says it once in the movie. It's never
in there. It's in there.
It's subtext.
I must have seen a deleted scene and it says that,
Way deleted, like not even in the script.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're dead. So today we're talking about RoboCop, but before we get to that, Riri, come on, man, rein me in a little bit. So now we need to do, because we're not doing watches, but we need some business. Business.
No. It's
Any business?
It's a little bit of business. Yes.
A little bit of business.
A little bit of business. Actually, the only business I have to offer is the usual that we, encourage everybody to visit the website, visit the blog, visit the Facebook group.
Pause there. Slow down. Slow your roll.
Slow down.
So, because
something
we haven't been pitching too hard lately, but is happening is Afterthoughts, man. What a great
Afterthoughts. Yes.
What a brilliant sort of thing for people to go
and
do.
And what's great is that like sometimes the afterthoughts are going to be, somewhat thought-provoking and perhaps a bit spiritually reflective, as like Asia's was when she inaugurated the series. Sometimes it's going to be like recontextualizing the work of a director and purely sort of like just a sort of a more critical mindset, if that's the kind of thing you're into. So you never know what it's going to turn up as in the afterthoughts. Sometimes it's going to be us, sometimes it's going to be members of the broader Fog community, but I mean it's really cool. So after every a Friday after an episode release, check out the website.
Huh?
Friday, Saturday.
Sometime the weekend after the episode airs, before the next one happens.
then yes, go to the.
It's more like between thoughts,
Yeah, go to the blog at thefearofgodpodcast.com and check out Afterthoughts. You can only find them there, and they're great.
Yeah. So Afterthoughts, it is. Write a review or don't.
What a pitch.
Come join the Facebook group. I mean, at this point, it's just crickets.
Why bother with a review?
We need to stop asking, and they're just going to multiply. But the last business time is going to pivot us directly into our little segment here, because we're in the middle of a TV guidepost, Riri.
It's a little bit of a TV guidepost. That's right.
A little bit. So we are. How many episodes of this season?
This is 8. Well, wait. I mean, before we get there, come on. I know it's been a while, but
oh, sorry, I forgot.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, it's time once again to visit TV guideposts. This time around, we're going to a land which, must admit, I've tried 5 times to find out the name of and can't seem to locate the name of this land or of some of the central characters in it. But we're going to The Witcher, a Netflix original series based on a series of best-selling books and starring Superman.
Subsequent video game.
And its subsequent video game, yes. Don't know what that voice was, but we'll just go ahead and keep going with it.
From Bleviken.
And so, oh my gosh, I'm feeling very confused by all of this, but we're glad that you're here, and we're glad that that we're entering back into TV guideposts. So join us for the first 2 episodes of The Witcher. Thanks. Oh.
That was in the spirit of the show. I just got eviscerated,
You sure did, yeah.
Right when
Superman the Barbarian, he got his taste for blood and Zod, so he's just gonna like go for it, and he's just gonna,
he's like, "You're dead."
every 2 minutes. And then I told him, you're dead.
There's going to be a movie one time that we cover, and that's like the tagline. That's going to be in it, actually. And man, I'm going to run wild with that.
So funny. So, okay. This was maybe 4 years ago now at this point. I was at a work conference.
Okay.
Yeah, story time. No, I'm just kidding. So about 4 years ago, I was at a maybe 5 now, but I was at a work conference, and it was one of those places where a lot of people. I was new to leadership at my job. I had just been promoted to supervisor, and there was this workshop that they wanted to do for both long-standing leaders and a few people who had just entered in to get together and have basically a conference about leadership skills, studying personality types, navigating different situations and everything. Just a kind of a 4-day long training. And the only context whatsoever that I had for The Witcher in any degree is the person in my group in one of like the last sections. He was from Poland, and he loved The Witcher. Like it was his favorite series of books, and he loved playing the video game. It was just like his thing. He was just captivated by the world, and he talked a lot about it. Again, that was like 4 or 5 years ago, and that was long before the Netflix series, was, maybe they were talking about it or developing it or whatever. But yeah, so that was my only context for this at all. I hadn't played the video game. I hadn't read any of the books. So I knew nothing going into this, except, fantasy type world. And then also we should mention that this specific section of what scares us was recommended to us by listener Jacob Sane. We are not going to be playing his contribution because we'll save that for the actual like thematic conversation about The Witcher. But in TV guidepost fashion, we're just going to talk about the first couple of episodes here. But yeah, I didn't know much. Did you have any knowledge other than just like, hey, a game exists, books exist about this, or did you know a little bit more going into it, or had you heard more?
Well, I must admit I am well versed in the lore of the Nilfgaardians, and no, I really didn't. So
Nilfgaardians Leviosa. Sorry.
Wow.
No.
Leviosa. I did not know it was a book series. All I knew was video games.
Mm-hmm.
And so no, I knew nothing about the world of it. I knew nothing about any of it. I've watched 2 episodes now, and I'm not sure I know much more than I did before I started it.
I tell you, man, it does not try very hard. It presumes that if you are watching it, you are either bought in for the homework, or you've already done the homework.
Okay. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
That either that you're going to, because in other words, it does not try very hard to make these characters or even its structure accessible. Like, it took me a little bit of like extracurricular homework to figure out that they were jumping around in time. Like, that took me a little bit. That was not immediately apparent to me. I realized like by the second one that I was like, okay, wait a second. I think these are at different like places. Are these just interconnected little sequential stories? But like literally the first episode is split up to 2 stories, the Henry Cavill adventure and the young girl adventure, and they're happening 30 years apart from each other. They're not concurrent.
Is that clear in the episode?
I found it out extracurricularly, so maybe it's not clear.
Does that become clear in the second episode?
I don't think so.
Here's the thing, Reed. I'm a little worried. I was on like a mushroom trip or something.
Oh my
these 2
gosh.
episodes.
Okay, yeah.
Because I don't know anything has happened. And
he's like, I saw some sword fighting. I saw one time somebody sang a song, and then there was some magic.
Perked me up. I was like, oh, this is a little.
A little ditty
about Jack and Diane.
Wow.
I did not. Okay, so I will be kind and generous here. I am choosing generosity because I am recognizing I'm coming in with nothing. And once, now I'm not there yet, but after the 2 episodes, I was like, man, WTF. I don't know. I don't really know. I
I
can't.
don't know what to do.
I can't make heads or tails of this. I don't
Mm.
know what anybody is saying. It was.
I can't tell when they're
Yes.
if they're speaking Elvish or
It
if they're
was
dropping actual
it was
names.
overwhelming. And then I started doing a little reading, just try to get some footing. It is funny. You know, I will often report on the show how, you know, let's take Under the Shadow or whatever. Movies I haven't seen, I will just jump in.
Yeah.
Feet first. No real care. Just I'll find my bearings. Sometimes that's a bad choice because I couldn't find my bearings. I mean, I was just drowning in jargon and foreign names. I mean, in the first episode, there's a scene where Henry Cavill is in some Scarlet Witch hex world with this wizard guy. And Reed, if you'd been playing a drinking game with the number of words they say that are non-familiar words, you'd have been laid out after that scene. I told my wife, I was like, this must have been what it was like for people who had no Tolkien knowledge and started Fellowship 20 years ago. They're like, what is this? So I am being jokey right now, also saying I am buckling up. I'm going to try to do my homework right now. 2 episodes in, I'm like, huh?
I don't know, y'all. I don't know. Well,
Snotter what? Let's go watch that. But I am choosing generosity because I want, you know, like I like Cavill a lot. I think it's got the earmarks of stuff I would enjoy. It was just it was head spinning. I'll be real.
So I can appreciate that in many ways. So one thing that I'm presuming you didn't do that I think helped me a lot. You've teased me for this before, but I have a tendency to watch movies with subtitles, regardless of whether subtitles are needed.
I started to turn them on.
Oh, okay.
I'm like,
yeah.
I don't. Come on, man. I tease you when it's like doesn't make any sense why you would do that. It makes absolute sense why you would do that here. And yes, I got to a point. I'm like, huh? What? I don't know what you're saying.
Like, why are
Superman?
Why are you talking
like
about
speaking
this?
Kryptonian? So yeah,
I did coin from my Kikamura.
Mainly because I'm like, what? It was the word Blevikin. I'm like, what are they? What is that? What are you saying?
It's in the town.
I know that now, but like in the moment, I'm like, yeah.
You just hear somebody saying, "Leave Blevikin with your Kikamura before I."
Yeah. Siri and Charybdis and
Segabor.
That was it. That was the word. I was like, huh? Sega. Say goodbye. Sega what?
Oh my gosh. Well, and so the
Segabor. That's
what's
like
interesting.
That's like Exegol and Rise of Skywalker. It just like gets caught in your throat. Segabor.
Wow.
I love you, Jacob.
Well, and I'm very curious to see where the show goes because, like, for instance, I remember having this feeling, and for those who have not watched Westworld, like, anytime that a story plays around with time, you know, post 2006 or 2004, whenever, they're going to say, oh, well, it's akin to Lost, or it's kind of comparable to Lost in some ways. And whereas like Westworld, did you ever watch any of Westworld?
Nope.
The HBO series? So though it didn't reveal it until like maybe late in the first season, if at all, is telling you storylines, and they're all set in the same world, but the storylines take place in vastly different times.
Sure.
And because a lot of these characters are robots, they have not aged, so they are
dead.
there. You're dead. So, but the robots have not aged, so they're interacting with younger and older versions of the same people, and you don't realize that until later. And so,
not gonna watch it now.
Like, and man, as if
Boom.
it wasn't already hard enough.
Yeah.
You're dead. So
it's called Robocop, but really, what is What's the premise?
You're dead. So, but back to The Witcher.
Yeah.
So, when I picked up on, and then again, I wasn't smart enough to realize this on my own, but when I, went and did a little bit of reading about it and realizing like, oh, okay, these are taking place at different time frames, and there's presumably, although I won't know this in full fruition until I reach, episode 5, 6, or whatever, until they start to converge. But presumably these plot lines are all sort of laying the groundwork both for the world that they're in and the characters that they are. So what I know as of right now is Henry Cavill is like a mutated person who hunts monsters. That's what he does. And he's navigating this world most often for hire. That's his vocation, as well as sort of his life's purpose is to hunt down and kill
He has a name,
monsters.
Reed. What's his name?
Geralt. But Rivia?
There you go.
Oh, I didn't even look it up.
Look at you. You're
right there.
Wow.
Oh,
You're a Witcher.
Oh, you're dead. So, anyway, he wanders about and kills monsters. Simultaneous to this, there is a kingdom, Centra. Is that it? Centra?
Sure. Don't look it up. Just roll with it for now.
Just roll with Centra. But if it's wrong,
episodes. We'll catch ourselves between episodes.
We'll catch ourselves. Okay, so I think it's Centra, but but there's this kingdom that has fallen to these invading forces, and in the process of that, the king and queen, who were the grandparents, although they were still quite young.
Yeah, I thought so too. Yeah.
But the king and queen were the grandparents of this young child, and the king falls in battle.
Cyrilla, I thought.
Cyrilla?
Yeah.
Cyrilla Cuthbert? No. So
Wow. That's an Anna Green Gables.
So but they call her something else.
Siri. Yeah, they call her Siri.
They call her Siri. Okay. So so she is obviously like heir to the throne, though it was not supposed to be this quickly upon them that she would be eminent to claiming the kingdom. And so
Centra. Yeah, you're right. Because she's the lion cub of Centra. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So, but the kingdom has fallen to the invading forces, and that is a name. It starts with an N, but I can't remember.
The Nilfgaardians. I already said that.
Nilfgaardians. Okay.
Come on. Keep up.
Listen. Listen. So, you choked on Sogobor. I gave you that one.
Yeah.
So the plot lines are kind of revolving around the adventures of Geralt and Ciri as she's sort of escaped the invading forces with her life and has wandered into the woods. The end of the first episode, somebody, a character that I honestly thought was going to play a bigger role, but dies at the end of the first episode, Renfrey, prophesied, I guess you would call it, or like spoke to Geralt that his destiny was with the girl in the woods, which I have to presume is Ciri. And so, what I don't know, because I'm only 2 episodes in, the plot line around the
Renfrey told Superman that
told Superman that his destiny was with the girl in the woods.
Grandma tells Ciri, "Find Geralt.
Yes.
He is your destiny." Yeah.
Yes. So that's how the message got to Ciri. Renfrey said it to Geralt, and so
I was like, okay, the love interest or something. She's going to be a supporting player. Nope, you're dead.
Wow. That's going to be the surrogate tagline throughout this entire thing. Every time somebody stumbles. So, but I think, I don't know this because in my extra reading, I did not find out anything about like spoilers for future episodes. But what I presume, because the plot line feels terribly unresolved, is the half elf girl who has like the twisted spine, Yennefer, right. I think Yennefer. Is I presume that we will see more of that. I thought the Renfrey character was going to be like an ongoing sort of threaded plot line, and then it just sort of resolved. Of course, Segabor shows up in the second episode as like a, he's an influencer of that Istrid character that is so Segabor is hiring Istrid to spy on no, write this down. Segabor has
I got my chart. My chart right here.
So yeah, but I think Segabor has commissioned. I think his name is Istrid. Oh my God, this is so intimidating.
Is Istrid the other magician guy that Yennefer encounters through the portal?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And I think
Who is
think
Segabor? Who is the old wizard in the first episode? Is that Segabor?
And you know what? I said Segabor. I've been saying it wrong this whole time. It's Stregobor. So different.
Strego Nona.
Wow. Strego no more. My God, I'm trying to find the name
Jacob
of
is
that.
so pissed at us.
He's rolling
I'm
with
kidding.
it.
I know.
Gosh, it is frustrating me that I cannot find the name of.
It's okay.
Of
Just
that
go with
character.
it.
But anyway, I think it's Istrid. But
it.
anyway, but Stregobor commissioned him to spy on Yennefer. Meanwhile, the witch who took her in
for 4 marks,
for 4 marks, she commissioned Yennefer to spy on Istrid. So there's a little bit of like gamesmanship
Intrigue
happening there. Yes, cat and mouse, if you will, and that felt unresolved. So I have a feeling that we're going to see more of that plot line. Again, I thought Renfrey was going to be like this person, and she gets taken out at the end of the first episode. Wow.
Now, did I miss something? Because why did she say these TV guideposts are just going to be me? Like, now, why did this happen? Reed, will you explain why that happened?
Did this?
Who?
And us guessing.
I'm going to write the word and hold it up and ask you to pronounce it. You know,
no.
She refers to herself as like a mutant or a
yeah. She was, and that's something that the show hasn't done.
I got the impression it wasn't. Hold on. I'm
gonna need a minute.
Geralt as mutant was having been put upon him. I took it as just you are this half breed or some other thing. Like
yeah. I mean,
like mutants in Marveldom are born that way, you know.
Well, and that's what I was about to say is that the show hasn't really to my understanding, by episode 2
limited.
Amen. To my understanding, by episode 2, the show hasn't really established very much like the mutation component. Is it thrust upon you? Are you
does it matter?
Born with it? Wow.
No, I'm not being rude. I'm just like, does that matter to the nature of the show? I mean,
or is it that or is it just that they are mutated humans and therefore, mutated beings, therefore, gonna have some
born this way, baby.
Wow. So anyway, I will say this because we've spent like 15 minutes trying to sort of unpack the mechanics of it. I'll just say this. So I can see the comparisons to Game of Thrones. I can see them, from the first 10 minutes of the movie, just the world itself, the general, not a movie, it's a TV show, but the tone of everything, the way that like Game of Thrones it didn't put the cookies on the bottom shelf. It makes you work for the information that it's giving to you. And so, yeah, that I can see some of those comparisons. Shelf. This one.
That's a tall shelf. I'm like,
yes.
Oh.
But I mean, I got to imagine, and maybe this is something that Jacob can chime in on and kind of help us with. I got to imagine for fans of the video game and series,
well, sure,
it probably feels refreshing to just be like, oh, good, they didn't waste a lot of time like holding our hand on it. They just sort of thrust us into it.
Yeah.
And so Blaviken, yeah.
Blaviken.
But I am curious, like these early entries of TV Guideposts, as listeners will remember, is just skirting the superficial until we can wind up to the, to the thematic conversation.
Clearly.
Wow.
I did watch a video after I'd watched the 2 episodes and was kind of trying to do a little bit of just screwing my head back on. I found a video of Cavill breaking down the fight scene from episode 1. It was a really cool video, actually. I don't know where I found it, but
that was a gruesome fight. I mean,
it is. Well, interestingly, so it's all one take. But he's talking about the blocking, the choreography, and his sword is a half instrument. Like it is only half of the sword so that they could digitally put the rest of the blade in.
Oh, I see.
So the choreography could all be done with minimal fear of actual harm.
But there was fear of actual harm. Minimal, but No, but I mean, like
What?
you said, it's half a blade. Oh, you mean it's just the hilt?
Well, no, it's not just the hilt. There's
But that's what I'm saying. Like, if there's
envision
any
a
version of
broadsword, it's cut
Right.
in half. Yeah, sure. I mean, yeah, it's big dudes beating the
I'm like,
tar out
man,
of each other and
because
fake.
I'm telling you, man, like if Henry
Tell
Cavill
me.
was coming, well, if Henry Cavill
Oh,
was
he's
coming
a
at me
mountain.
with, that's the thing, is like if he was coming at me with that sword and he's like
He's a
into
good looking
it,
man, though.
I'll be like, oh my god, like he's about
Yeah.
to, he's about to,
You
yeah.
Superman or you Geralt?
Oh my god. Well, both of them.
Either way, you might kill me.
That's right. Like that seems to be the common theme in Henry Cavill's work. But I'm just like,
Oh,
yeah, I'm just.
that was good.
But anyway,
You see him in
yes.
Mission Impossible? That was good.
That was a good movie.
That was a
a
good
really
movie.
good movie. Yeah, Henry Cavill
good.
doesn't get enough
I
love.
like him.
He's good. Yeah,
He gets a lot of love. That's
okay.
I mean, look at him. Look at the man. Damn.
How can you not love that?
Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's true. It's true. He's a handsome
Women
guy.
want him. Men want to be him.
But yes, okay. So we will be continuing this journey, which will probably be some version of Reed and Nathan trying desperately to figure out exactly, what The Witcher is all about. But that brings us.
Can you outgo us with?
Well, I
the
was just
song?
about to. With the song.
Yeah.
No, I don't remember the song. I saw the episode once.
Put a penny in your Witcher or whatever it's called.
Penny for the put a penny in your Witcher. What in the world did you just say to? Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes another ridiculous episode of TV Guideposts.
Woo.
Pennies and Witchers and Balaclavians of Stregobor.
Wow. Making me hungry.
Tune in next
right.
time. Tune in next time. Tune in next time for TV Guideposts. Do it.
Episode. Are we doing 3 and 4 next? I don't
It's 3
know.
and 4 next
Okay.
time.
I mean, and we may need to just take them one at a time because, brother, I mean,
this is
what?
intense. Oh my god!
Wow.
So,
well,
yes,
I don't know.
3
That at
and
the
4.
end of all of this, I will be like a Witcher fan. I don't know, but this is a hell of a lot of fun. So thank you, Jacob,
it's
for
a blast.
your
Yes.
submission.
Absolutely,
Ooh.
absolutely. Woohoo! Okay, so yes, 3 and 4 next time, and that brings us to RoboCop, But as we typically do, this was another What Scares Us entry in this long running series. So as we have been prone to do, we are inviting once we've selected the entries, we reach out to the individual and see if they'd like to give us a recording, sharing their thoughts on that. And this was given to us by a friend of the Fog and real life friend of Nathan, Chase Island. And so he of the Island Family classic What You Watching hit on all the hit all the pop charts. So Chase was kind enough to share his thoughts on this film specifically and why he submitted it as an entry. So go ahead and take it away, Chase.
This is Chase Island, and this is what scares me. I saw Robocop at about age 8, and there were 3 specific horrific scenes that were forever seared into my brain. The first one is when Ed 209 riddles an executive with bullets in the boardroom, and the man falls to his death with what I now realize is a terrible stop-motion animation.
Oh my gosh.
I haven't listened to his thing, and I'm wondering if we should pull it up in case there's anything weird in it that we need to reference.
Just go with it. At this point, you just go with it. After that.
Okay.
And we're back. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you, Chase Island, for that offering about RoboCop,
What
the title of the movie that's so impenetrable. Riri, RoboCop, Peter Weller.
Are you looking for an inroad? Are you
Sure, you got something?
Searching for an inroad? Well, okay, so I have 2 personal stories.
Tell me.
So
like just just to share or about the movie? Like,
no, just things that are on my mind, and I just figure
Yeah.
now's
Sure,
now's
why not?
appropriate.
You know?
So no, so in all sincerity, so two stories, if you will, about RoboCop. The first one is super simple. It's just to say, and this would maybe be for a likes dislikes, but I love this score. I love it, and I own the soundtrack. Oh, that's the Terminator. Heavens to Betsy. Lord have mercy.
That
Oh,
man said heavens to Betsy.
so yeah, it is not the Terminator. That was not the
true.
score. Interestingly enough, though, they did use the Terminator theme in the trailer.
Yeah.
And
I was dropping some knowledge there.
Oh, where are you? Some
meta cop.
Metro Robo. So, but I love this soundtrack, and I was listening to the soundtrack one time when my son and I were driving around. I forget what errand we were running or something, but we were driving around. My son loves this score to the degree that sometimes he will get in the car and ask me, "Will you
Daddy,
play?"
can we watch that scene?
Wow.
When
No.
Murphy
No.
pulls off this mortal coil.
No, that's not. No.
Please, Daddy. Yeah.
But he loves that score, as I do. I mean, it's Basil Palladores. I don't know that I'm saying his last name correctly, but he's an outstanding composer, and I love this. I listen to this theme sometimes just as entertaining music because I love it. That was my first story. The second story is I'm glad this is such a weird thing for me to remember so distinctly, but I can remember going to the video store when I was like 7 years old, maybe 7 or 8, and going into the video store, and we were there to, I had permission to rent something, and I was not really allowed to watch rated R movies, but there was some concerns of content things, and as listeners know by now, like I was seeing plenty of horror things that weren't really for age appropriate for 6, 7, and 8. But I had this weird memory of walking up, and I was with my father in the video store, walking up and saying like, "Hey, RoboCop," because it had come out and it was one of the new releases, and I was like, "RoboCop, is this a good movie?" And the clerk at the store loved the movie, so he's very like, "Oh man, RoboCop's awesome." He's talking to an 8-year-old kid.
Yeah.
Oh man,
I get it.
RoboCop's amazing.
Movie store folk.
It's awesome, right? So then we proceed to start to check out RoboCop, and then my dad, being the responsible and diligent father that he is, steps forward and is like, "Is there a lot of bad language or anything in it?" And the look on the guy's face as he now looks up at the parent of the 8-year-old boy is what stands out in my memory, because he looks up, he's like, "Oh yeah, like, oh,
sorry,
yeah.
kid."
and he's like, "Yeah, there's a lot of violence, there's a lot of bad language. Oh yes." And so
you were like, "I'll rent that for $1."
I'll rent that for $1. But I don't know why that memory stays out for me. But RoboCop, I saw it, a few years later, and probably saw it on TV for the first time that I watched it, because I think it was a while later before I finally saw it unedited. But RoboCop is one of those few films that sort of stands as it was the unobtainable. It was like, okay, this guy had a very strong reaction. This is what I registered in my 8-year-old mind. This guy had a very strong reaction of affection to RoboCop, and the content prohibits me from seeing it. So for years, it sat in my mind as like this. This is going to be a big deal when I finally watch this movie. And so the first couple of times I watched it, I would have said like, "Yeah, it's RoboCop. I like it. Of course, I like RoboCop. Who doesn't like RoboCop?" But I don't. Perhaps this conversation will illuminate it for me. But in the recent years, RoboCop has catapulted in esteem in my mind. Like, it is, I love this film, and in many, many ways, I think this film does not always get the credit that I think it deserves. I think sometimes it gets this credit, but I don't think it always gets the credit it deserves necessarily for like its cleverness, its satirical prowess, its sharpness in terms of its technical construction. I think it is a really, really outstanding film, and I think it would be really easy to write it off as just like, you know, an 80s action sci-fi thriller, when I think it actually is far more noteworthy and laudable than that. But that is my relationship with RoboCop. What is your history and or opinion of RoboCop?
Well, I have a fuzzy memory yet distinct mental image of some version of RoboCop video game. I can't remember if this was an NES game or like an arcade game. I don't know. So I was, as a chap, at the bowling alley. I bowled a lot. And
Did
they
you?
had, yeah, I did. Still enjoy the game. I'm a demolition guy. I just like throwing heavy things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't quite understand that affirmation there, but sure.
You love throwing things down the lane and just being like,
I really do. Yeah.
dead.
Yeah. Yeah. 7-10 split. You're dead. But they'd always have arcade games and stuff. So why even bother throwing that in there is just this video game knowledge I have and these fuzzy memories of being present and the Diamond Gems arcade at the Peachtree Mall in Columbus, Georgia. Shout out.
Oh.
Diamond Gems. But I really can't remember if that was an arcade game or an NES game. I don't think I had seen the film until at least into my 20s, because I had seen it before this. But this is probably the second time I've seen it. I can acknowledge and register what you are describing in your affection. They don't quite push me over into that to share that affection.
Understood. Sure.
In other words, I do recognize it as more than just loud, noisy action thriller. I mean, it's pretty on its face with its satire and its kind of cutting tone. That said, and maybe this will reveal itself too. Maybe I just haven't sat with it long enough, or just a couple viewings in, it's not quite registering for me. I'm not 100% sure the movie coalesces all of that stuff into a coherent picture. But I'm not saying it doesn't. I'm simply saying in my current apprehension of it, I'm not quite there. So I like it. I like it.
You like it? You enjoy it?
Maybe.
You're like, I don't know.
Yeah. Well, I this particular viewing, for whatever reason, by the end of it, it just felt loud and like a lot. But that's what I'm saying, is I can also acknowledge some of that loudness serves a particular function, not just to be loud.
Sure. Yeah.
For instance, we're not doing a whatcha, but I watched the new Mortal Kombat, and you watch that and you're like,
test your might. Oh, that's great.
That's fun. That was good. But like, there is zero function for the level of gore and intention and intentional evisceration and viscera that you see in that movie beyond gore, viscera, and violence.
Yeah, sure. Right.
RoboCop, you're like, okay, it's loud. There's a lot going on. Lots of shooting. Lots of just limbs.
Yeah.
Just hitting the ground or bursting. But I know there's something here.
Well, because I think that's the thing, is like, you could make a case that it's like, okay, well, why all this gratuitous ultra violence? But then it's like, I think it would be very difficult to objectively assess RoboCop and not acknowledge like it's a dauntingly smart film. And that seems to counterpoint some of like what you're talking about, because you can approach it and it feels bombastic and it feels in many ways almost like violent, like pornography level of like violence, like just some of the violence. It's not as if it's pervasive throughout the movie, but when it comes, they relish in it. And to that end, it's like,
did you catch? I'm sorry to cut you off. Did you catch they had to like to get an R rating was work?
Yes.
To the point, I was reading a story about this today. This is really funny. They didn't film Murphy's death initially,
right?
And went to submit it, claiming we're out of money, but wanted to get what they had kind of past the MPAA. And then because they liked it so much, they gave them more money and they shot what's in there. But that scene they had to do multiple different iterations of.
Yeah, right. I had heard about that. And I think that would be an easy way for people to kind of write off the film and be like, oh, it's just, now I'm not saying you did this, but it would be really easy for people to say like, it's just loud and it's just gory and that just doesn't make any sense. But there's just so much, again, technical prowess, and there's so much intentionality and some cleverness under it. I will say this, and this is pivoting a little bit to where I was going to go, like thematically speaking, but I am struck by how human the film is. I'll say it this way, and I'm not the first person to make this observation, but action films in the 80s typically featured a human being who was trying very hard to be ultra stoic and unfazed by whatever was going on in the world around them. You know, they come in, there's gunfire blasting all over the place, and they are just the Rock, you know, not Dwayne Johnson, the Rock, but they're just a metronome.
Alcatraz.
They're just yeah, sure, maybe that. But they are just a firm sort of catalyst through this, which is why like an action film like Die Hard is so unconventional, because Bruce Willis is not that type of character. But there were plenty of action films that where the action hero is just a stoic, almost robotic character. What strikes me about RoboCop, and some of it is in Weller's performance, but RoboCop is one of the most human characters in this entire film, and he's a robot, he's a machine, and I mean post his death.
Well, he's
like
part man.
Part machine.
Mall cop.
But what I'm saying sincerely is that like his humanity to me rings through in nearly every scene he's in, which I find incredibly striking given the fact that he's a robot. And you know, with little things that Weller does, like with just the tilt of his head, or with the way his posture shifts when he either, you know, sees something or hears something that echoes back to who he used to be, and that rings through despite the almost complete body coverage in robotics and metal that he's trying to act through. And I just find that tremendously remarkable. So anyway,
can I give you some credit? Or
of
the
course.
movie some credit?
Yeah.
Or fandom of it, thusly. I think that now, you know, I haven't seen every single 80s action movie, but something that you could almost say the movie's too on the nose with its satire, just with the intermittent commercial breaks and whatnot. But something that gives me a little more confidence in them. It's not true from the violence standpoint. You know, the violence is excessive. It's perhaps intentionally so, but it is excessive. But from a sensitivity standpoint, and it's a bit of scripting. It's when RoboCop saves the woman from the guys.
Yes.
And to me, most movies would just would just end that scene with maybe her gratitude towards him, or it's just kind of ends, moves on to whatever's next.
Right.
But it doesn't. It actually, that scene actually ends with Robocop saying, I don't remember the exact lines, but he explicitly tells her to go into like a rape crisis center, like for your trauma.
Yeah, he said, "You've experienced a trauma. I will contact a rape crisis center."
Yeah, and that felt very. I noticed it. I was like,
"Yes,
you are trying to be conscientious in your treatment of this utterly ancillary character,
right?"
By having that be the response. Now, maybe I'm applying too much weight to that line, but it felt okay.
No. It's a sharp script, and that's why I'm so quick to say no. I don't think you're just applying too much weight. It's a really sharp script. And this was not necessarily like a scripting thing, but to the same point about like its conscientiousness, and this speaks also to like the humanity or the tenderness. It always just strikes me so fascinating that these kids in that news expose, the kids are just like around him. They're just surrounding him because they're fascinated by him. And he, who, as the film has already established, could crush every bone in a man's hand with his hands, is able to stand there tenderly while these children sort of like examine him and do so. And yes, it follows up with that joking, like, any word for the kids out of there? Stay out of trouble. Like, there's times where it's trying to be tongue in cheek, but at the same time, I feel like it never really loses that sensibility of like, no, Robocop is, it's weird. It's like you did not lose the man in the machine, and that's and that I think is central to what the film is trying to explore in terms of the relationship between machinations and corporate sensibilities and individual personal identity. We can certainly get into that at any time we want to, but I
will give credit. I mean, I think the design of the character Robocop is really iconic.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
It's I do like simple. That a lot. Did you see that the glove is a foam pad? It's like foam hand, and that they had to shoot him catching the keys like 50 times, like 50 takes, because it kept bouncing out of his hand.
I did see that. That's hilarious. I also loved on a technical shot, and I think this was not the way it was intended. I think that the director originally wanted to, and I think it was Rob Bottin from who did the makeup for The Thing. I think it was his suggestion that Verhoeven was originally going to just cut straight to like this big snap cut to Robocop just in all of his vigor. And it was suggested to just show glimpses of Robocop in sort of more obscured ways. The very first time you see him is through the TV monitor, his own, like reflection, and then through the fuzzy glass on the window, and then like you see him from behind. So it's a while. You never get that I can remember. You never get like the big, here's the moment where he stands up. It's all just obscured and all just kind of, and I think it's all the more powerful for that because it would be easy.
I did do some reading on the technical stuff today, and I loved the note that they had to basically stop filming once the suit was finally available, because Weller had trained with a mime for the body choreography, but the suit created this whole impairment of what they had rehearsed and practiced, that he had to learn how to work in the suit, and that for a number of days before they put an air conditioner inside the suit, it was so heavy and it was so hot filming, he was losing like 3 pounds a day just shooting with it on. But I really what?
Oh, I was just gonna say, on that note, when people talk about this movie, I don't think Weller gets enough credit for how he handles his body in it, because that's him. Like that's him with this affectation, and you never lose it. It never, in one frame of the film, by my memory, feels like a normal being in a normal foam suit. It feels like a robotic sort of machination. Just wow.
Reed, I got a question for you.
No.
Can you fly, lackey?
Oh my God.
No,
God.
but really, a real question. So, Reed, it's been a tough 14 months or so.
Sure.
Christmas is on the horizon, and I want to know,
Oh,
do you think Nukem will be the hot board game property of the 2021 Christmas shopping season, or is that just going to be a flash in the pan? Like Nukem,
it's
going in big
flash
or
in the pan.
out?
Nukem. No, it's a flash in the pan, man. It's gonna
Flash
be
in the
over.
pan, man. That
Yeah,
sounds like a
flash-
really lame
it's
superhero.
It's gonna be. He just shows up and then
I'm here.
out. He's out.
I'm gone.
I'm
Yeah.
out. Oh, this
Who
is
was that?
intimidating.
You know.
That was flash in the pan, man. All the good he does showing up for the but that board game, well, all the media segments
Yeah.
just are so ridiculous, but they still hold up so well in my mind. That whole like I should have written down the quote, but they're saying these like, oh man, you broke my peace treaty or something. It was this really technical kind of like political science kind of terminology. It's like, that's it, your foreign aid is rejected. Nukem, from Butler Brothers.
That's intense.
Yeah, no kidding. But did you notice that the media segments split the film into 3 acts? Did you notice that?
I mean,
So wow.
I'm just saying, like, no, it's act breaks.
It was just interesting because there were 3 of them, and it opens with it, and then progresses all the way up through through Murphy's death, and then it moves from there. There's another one, and then it moves all the way through RoboCop's kind of rise and fall, if you will, where he's just and then ends. The last segment is sort of what takes us through to where he's actually the rediscovering of himself, where he's going to become Murphy again.
So,
yeah. Nathan,
I feel like we're, for listeners, a little peek behind the curtain here. We've tinkered a little bit in the last few months with our formatting and trying to roll where the spirit leads, and I feel like to some fruitful ends. And I feel like there's something that's been kind of staring at us for a while. So we've kind of dulled our more pedantic listing.
Sure,
things,
right,
but I don't want to totally jettison all of that. We occasionally will still, what did you like? I mentioned the Robocop suit a minute ago.
Yeah.
I feel like something that we've had staring at us for a while that I want to, like a first issue or like a significant appearance of a new comic book character.
Oh, okay. Yes.
Cite it here. So Beckley, take note. Instead of just a list of scares, we've had this sort of phrase for a while. I want to institute a new segment, Reed.
It's a new segment right here.
It's a new segment.
It's a new segment.
It's a new segment. This segment, Reed. We're just gonna simply call it "That Ain't Right."
That ain't right.
That ain't right.
Oh, I love it.
We're gonna do it.
Love it.
We're gonna do that ain't right.
That ain't right.
It's gonna
That
be
ain't
like
right.
instead
We're
of
gonna do
listing all the things, we're gonna do that ain't right, and it's gonna be your thing that ain't right, my thing that ain't right.
Okay,
and
I love this.
I mean,
I love this.
I gotta be honest.
Okay,
There's a couple of that ain't rights in Robocop. I don't know which one you would pick as your top. That ain't right.
Okay.
But this is our moment. I want to know what. I'm tempted to go first because I want to.
Yeah, you introduced the segment. You didn't give me no prep time for the thing. Yeah, so you got to go first. You got to go first.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate. You're a generous fella.
Yeah. No
so for this very first episode, it feels because you can't just have like, what's a real weak scare, and I wrote down on us if we had done scares list previous to That Ain't Right era. The line, the rudimentary paste that maintains his organic system. That's disgusting. But, is that ain't right? I don't know that quite elevates.
No.
That ain't right. Like, it's just like, if you're just making a list of stuff that kind of is gross.
Sure.
Maybe.
Yes.
But that's not what that ain't right.
Yes.
But this movie, Paul Verhoeven. Perhaps from a similar land as Wolfgang Peterson. last week is whew, man, what an episode.
Oh boy.
I love
This
it.
is great.
So
Robocop.
just gifts you. It's like, you know what, Nathan? There's some bullets and some traditional violence.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's this. And I was like, check. So, Reed, if you are ever in an abandoned, I don't know, steel mill or whatever the heck that kind of facility was.
Yeah.
You need to be conscientious of what? Just metal debris that you're going to cut your foot on, get tetanus. No. You would think abandoned steel mill, sure, metal on the ground, cut your foot. Or precarious, kind of structures that you might fall off. I mean, that's scary. I don't like heights, really. But
of course.
But these are endemic to an abandoned steel mill. What you really have to be on the lookout for, Reed, is just the giant barrel, tub, vat of toxic sludge. You need to be mindful.
So disgusting
that it's there. Just know, okay.
Oh my
I'm in an abandoned steel mill. Of all the things that could happen to me, one of those is encountering a giant vat, because we're gonna sludge. I mean, the point is not the point is not to ask why. The point is to know that it's there. And when your boy Emil gets, because like what?
He melts. He just melts.
We're not even there yet. I'm rewinding to the writer's room. They're like, you know what this scene needs? It needs the Toxic Avenger, but bad guy. I mean, like, why? How did this? I don't even know. Were they next door to the trauma offices and they overheard some stuff? Maybe. Did they just get a wild hair and like, this would be cool? I tell you, when your boy gets run by the car by, I think it's Boddicker, or no, the good guys run him down.
Yeah.
And he gets sort of, pinned, slammed, splashed into the sea of toxic sludge. And you think, hopefully we're not going to see the outcome of that.
No, there it is.
You do.
There it is. There it is.
Just this
Lord have mercy.
Excellent makeup work by that makeup artist.
No
Kudos, kidding. Hat tip.
Robotine.
That person. Yeah. And,
or Botten. Maybe Botten.
So it's not that it just is on site, this toxic sludge. It's not just that your boy gets like run into it. It's not just that he then shows up and is like misshapen and deformed and just sloughing through the steel mill place, and everybody's like, what happened to this dude? It's not just that. It's that then he gets run down and what is he, burst? I mean, he just like pops.
Yeah.
Like a 15-year-old's pimple.
Ooh.
Yeah. Yes. That, Reed. That right. Listener. That Paul Verhoeven. That ain't right. That ain't right. That's like a whole other movie happens inside that movie.
Oh my God.
You're talking about Not Your Story? That's it. That is it. That poor guy, he's screaming for a movie. And he's like, and they're like, not your story, man.
Not your story, man. Nope.
That ain't right.
My God. That ain't right.
That is my submission to the inaugural segment of That Ain't Right.
I should never let you go first because that ain't toppable. I tried to tell you. You tried to tell me.
I think there's one other scene. It's not as grotesque, but it is as wicked.
Man, I would be so curious what you would say.
What? Come on.
Well, I don't know.
Well, what would you say?
Well, I was sitting here trying to. So where my mind immediately went was the first death in the film. The executive. When Ed 209 he throws down the gun, and Ed 209 is still like, you have 10 seconds to comply, and he's running around the room, and everybody's like they're pinballing him out of the way to where he can just finally get free to get absolutely.
That's Kenny.
Kenny.
And you're like, oh my God,
look, oh my God, they killed Kenny. So yeah, that's that was gonna be what I was gonna suggest as my That Ain't Right. It was just like him just sort of like popping and crackling and extended scene. Like it cuts to him, it cuts away, Cuts back, he's still like popcorn,
wait,
like just
there's
boom, boom,
more.
boom, boom, but there's more. Yes. So yeah.
Now that's the one of him falling out the window too, right?
No, that's at the end when Murphy kills the main villain and he falls out the window.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And there's like an old white man to be named Dick. Yeah. No, I was gonna say the next that ain't right. Although that qualifies absolutely.
Yeah.
It's your submission, so far for me to
That ain't right.
critique it. I did choose the cream of the crop, the sludge of the steel mill.
Yeah.
But
that's the scene of this movie.
It is. I would have said Murphy's death. I mean,
that's so graphic. It's so well, and it starts with specifically his death is rough, but specifically when Boddicker has him pinned and is, sort of tormenting him with the gun thing. I remember, so I saw it the first time edited for television, and just that shot of him pointing the gun at him and doing the whole like that is just
jacked up.
I mean, it's so torturous. And then just like shows his hand and then not his hand.
Yeah,
that Lord have mercy. Yes.
I think my jaw dropped. Oh yeah, no.
Right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. That was pretty.
No more clapping.
Yeah, that was pretty graphic. It's funny. Well, it's not funny, but apparently Verhoeven had positioned, or in his thought processes and his constructs, he had positioned Murphy as something of a Christ figure, and that death scene as something of a crucifixion, which I don't totally buy in other elements of the film.
That ain't right.
But I will say, like, man, that and it's also it's just gruesome because he's surrounded and he's helpless, and they just absolutely tear him to pieces. And so that ain't right. That absolutely ain't right. Can I mention a love? It wouldn't fit in that ain't right segment, but I love this so much. I love that, and the reason I made me think of it and remember it is because it follows Murphy's death. So, or Murphy's like getting shot up. Then he's taken in there, that whole trauma team, which by the way was a real ER trauma team. I don't know if you had stumbled on that. And so they are, like moving through, okay, pads, try to resuscitate him. Okay, that's not working, blah, blah, blah. They move around through that. Well, then from there, screen is dark and it's like, okay, call it, time of death or whatever. And then the very next shot is that little like electronic zzz, zzz, and for the next probably 5 minutes, everything is from his perspective as Robocop.
Right.
It's from, him when they were platforming, installing the LED screen, and they had their New Year's Eve party and he's online for just a few minutes. That whole segment, I love it for what it does narratively. I love it for how inventive it is. And also, speaking yet again about the humanity of it, it puts us literally into the perspective of Murphy and shows him, he is not a thing outside objectively to be awed at yet. He is, we are him. We are seeing the world as he sees it. And there is so much that I love about that choice and about just that whole sequence. And so I just wanted to mention it because I don't know if it'll come up in other contexts. But anyway, that was my love.
What else you got?
So I wrote down 3 lines, and I have a general question. But I wrote down 3 lines that just really stand out to me, and I really don't know if any of these 3 lines would probably be inroads to broader thematic conversation. I'm just going to mention them in a general sense of awe about the script, and then maybe I do have a bit of a question for you that I can kind of unpack. So the 3 lines I wrote down, the first one is when, and these are not sequential to the film, but perhaps in order of their resonance to me, is when he says to Lewis after she's been shot up, and she doesn't die. She actually is in RoboCop 2, but she's been shot up, and then she says to him, "I'm a mess," and he says back to her so casually, "They'll fix you. They fix everything." And I don't know what about it just really struck me as this, like the passivity of it as she is literally saying like she might be dying right there. And he's like, they'll fix you. They fix everything. And of course he gets blown away more than anybody else in the film, except for maybe Toxic Waste Guy. And he's still here. He's still around. So there was that piece. The second one was actually said by Dick Jones, the main villain in the movie, where when Robocop tries to arrest him and Directive 4 stops him and begins to try to shut him down, what a gripping scene that whole thing is. But he says, "You're our product, and we can't very well have our products turning against us, can we?" And that, again, maybe would breath some more conversation thematically about just the ways in which we've said before in other contexts about like the machines and the mechanisms and we said in Channel Zero about like the devices and their pull on us and the systematic machinations of things. And it made me think about these ways in which, like, are we the product? Are we human beings the product? Or is the product being handed to us, and who's turning against who? Again, these are social media thoughts that I'm having about, like, anyway, it just struck out to me, that line of, "You're our product. You're not a real cop. You're our product, and we can't very well have our products turning against us." But the biggest one, and the one that would probably stand out to me as the most resonant line in the film and will bleed into my question to you, is when Robocop, after taking off his visor, and he's sitting there and he's talking, he asks Lewis what happened to his family and everything, and she says they moved away. And then he says something, God, just this line, it's tragic, but God, this line, he says, "I can feel them, but I can't remember them." And yeah, on the surface, it's a functional line because it's just talking about, he has a sense of who they are. But I'm like, it made me, it rattled all these things in my mind, maybe pivoting off a little bit of like our Lake Mungo conversation a couple weeks ago, where we're talking about like who we were in high school and the ways we see ourselves and everything like that. Of all the different things that I would say I can point to, you ask me right now with a snap of my fingers, hey, what were you like in this season of your life or this? And I would probably say I can feel it more than I can remember it. Mm-hmm. And that line that he says, again, struck me as so tragic, but also subtly profound, of I can feel it, but I can't remember it. And so my question to you, the one that I'm wrestling with this film, is when we get buried under so many systems and mechanics of life, so many machines, that it gets hard to determine like where the machine ends and where we begin, what'll it ultimately take for us to remember who we really are? And that's what I've been wrestling with as I've been processing this. And I find this film, again, I love it. Just, I also, yes, I love that it makes me think, and it makes me think about a lot of deep things, but I also enjoy it. Like I just enjoy the film because I think it's clever and fun, and also thoughtful. But this way that, like, when we get so under the rubble, that you watched WandaVision, the Ship of Theseus argument.
Oh,
and
yeah,
he's
loved it.
Like where he's like, is it still the Ship of Theseus?
Right.
And there's a way in which that would play. And for listeners who didn't watch WandaVision, there's this argument about the Ship of Theseus, that if the Ship of Theseus is found, but it's in disrepair, and you steadily begin to repair it over time with new boards and restore it, if you do that fundamentally so that it is all replacement part, is it still the Ship of Theseus? That's the
it's a vision asking another vision.
Exactly.
They're pondering their identities. Yeah.
Exactly. But the point being, when we find ourselves under the weight of so many of these, what looks like normal now and what feels normal now, like devices like our cell phones, it is hard for me to remember what life was like all these ways back, when these things that we have so at our fingertips were not there. And in that sense, I would say, as Murphy did, I can feel it, I can't remember it. Right. And I can feel something there, but I can't remember it. And so that's what I'm really wrestling with, because one of the things I love about the movie is it's about a man who has been transformed by both trauma and violent, devastation. He's been transformed into a new like machine thing. And then this is about his journey. It is not accidental that the final exchange of the film is nice shooting, son. What's your name? And he looks and says Murphy. And then it, cuts to the title and everything. I think that's very deliberate. And I know that they had some other alternate ending planned, but ultimately the film we get is that's what it leaves us with. Is it's about a man who lost everything and lost himself in the process, and now has gone on this journey to find himself again. And what will it take for us amidst so many devices, machines, systems, as individuals, as local communities, as a nation? What will it take for us to remember who we are and speak our name as we truly are and who we truly are? And that's what old Robocop is striking up in me. So how would you respond to those general thoughts, feelings, question, etc.?
I have pondered lately what you just asked is massive, so I'm gonna
fair
find my gate through my gate to walk through. I am vocationally in sales. I've done this for 7 years, and this year in particular, more than even previous eras of doing this, even previous 6 years, if you will, I find myself more kind of enjoying what I'm doing and having some chasing sounds like has a negative connotation to it. I don't totally mean that, but like leaning in to being a person who is in sales.
Yeah.
In a way that I think 10-year ago me might have been a little judgy of, and trying to decide, well, is it still the ship of Theseus?
Mm-hmm.
That's just one plank on a persona.
Right.
Now I do think it's important. It's a very small example there. It's big to me, but it's small, kind of just writ large to at least all the spheres you laid out there. I do think it's important to have a sense of truthfulness of self, which feels like a hippie phrase, but like I can reconcile what I just said about myself, because I despite the leaning in that I'm sort of doing these days, I guess, I don't feel like I am betraying myself in doing so. And I do think that's because your question is, how do we effectively stand up under the rubble, if you will.
Yeah.
And now what is interesting, more than I used to think, while you were building your question, I was trying to think, okay, how the hell am I going to tackle this one? But what I thought about is this is going to be weird, but the mental image that came to me was transplant me, take us out of, now ignore the notion of the sadness that would be attachment loss to the families we have. I don't mean that, but like, take the you that lives in Southern California, like you, not change your identity, but utterly alter your social location like utterly alter your geographical location, like put you in, picture Andy Dufresne out,
Yeah.
kind of fixing up his boat on the beach side.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Live in that scenario as the you are for 10 years.
Yeah.
And like there is a thread that carries you through there, and the you 10 years later in that scenario would look back at the you right now and be like, I liked that guy, I loved that guy, there were some things I would change about that guy here. You know what I mean? Like the evolution,
right.
the evolution of self that is maybe even right and healthy. So what I was trying to say a second ago is I used to think a more static self was appropriate.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I'm quite there anymore. I do think we mature, we grow, we evolve. We need to be cognizant when, in my example, okay, well, now you've become a little drunk on the sales.
Oh, okay.
You know what I mean?
Right.
We need to be cognizant of those things. I thought about Reed. One of the reasons I love the film Sound of Metal so much kind of scratches at some of what you're asking. Because what's so powerful to me about that movie is, as right and healthy as it seems the relationship he has to Lou is in the beginning, what you kind of learn at the end is it was still addiction.
Right.
Now, that codependency they shared, that, if we want to call it addiction, served a function, which, as they say at the end, is you saved me. You saved my life.
Yeah. Right.
But it's what's his character's name? Dang it.
Yeah.
Regardless.
Lost me. Yeah.
It's his character at the end realizing, I have changed. New has to be present in order for health and wholeness to live. Right. So I'm winding my way here because I don't think there's a simple answer other than centeredness, self-knowledge, the capacity to name the influences upon you.
Yeah. Right.
I don't know if I'm making any sense in the question you've asked, but it's what's coming to me.
Well, and in fairness, so first answer, yes, you are making sense. Second answer, I mean, in fairness, it's a huge question because it gets at the center of who we are. These things, nothing except for being a police officer comes to Murphy because of him asking for it. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It is he is just fulfilling his duty when he goes and tries to arrest the individuals who eventually take his life. And then he doesn't sign up for the program. He's literally, just because he's a cop who is on his deathbed, they plug him into this, they make him Robocop. And then that programming and everything, he didn't ask to necessarily like do something big, or he wasn't feeling disillusioned. He was just following the money and following the trail of criminals, if you will, and then stumbled into the uncovering the corporate espionage type of stuff. So I'm just wrestling with, like, we can so easily get caught up in, and we've addressed this before on the show, we can so easily get caught up in things that we would say were our choice, that we were, we were choosing to spend our time doing this activity or engaging in this thing. But like, to your point, I started my job, the job that I'm in, vocationally, you're in sales. I started the job I'm in 12 years ago, and I started it very directly when I applied for the position. They're like, why do you want to work here? Where are you trying to find a job? I said, I'm getting married. And I, at the time, as a bachelor, have like 3 part-time jobs, and that was sustainable, but that's not sustainable when I'm going to have a family. And so I need a regular job with prospects of a future. And that was 12 years ago. Never prior to that time would I have ever said, "Oh, I'm going to enter into this field, and that's going to be I'm in the aerospace industry, and it's like that's going to be my career." I never would have done that. And so what I'm identifying is that it's really easy to suddenly find yourself 10 years down the road, and you are there are conditions in your life that are very different from what you would have seen for yourself or from what you would have even maybe wished for yourself 10 years earlier. And I'm not speaking about that in a negative about my own situation. I'm just saying I never would have envisioned 10 years down the road, like, oh yeah, you're this manage in this corporation for the aerospace industry. I just never would have seen that.
You're making Robocops.
Yeah. I show up to work and I just walk around like, you're dead.
You're dead.
So, and so in that way, it can be really easy to suddenly just like embrace the condition that you're in as who you are. And it would be really, like the one thing that the second film, and it just does nothing with it. I saw the sequel and sure, if you like Robocop, the sequel's fine. But there's one moment in it where they interrogate him because he's tapped back into his other identity, and they interrogate him of like, you keep saying you're Murphy. What is your name? And they make him, they talk him in ways of that, like, okay, he cannot reclaim his former life. So embrace the fact that you're not Murphy anymore. And he's like, okay, I'm Robocop. And that whole sort of dynamic of him trying to identify, I'm Murphy, and Murphy is not the condition of my body, and it's not the condition of my limitations or whatever it is. And that whole way that we can sometimes define ourselves by our personal condition, our physical condition, the situation or condition of our life or the world around us. I was having maybe this will be a little bit cleaner or more coherent to what I'm trying to say. I was having a real heart-to-heart just recently with my wife just about a couple of things, and talking about things at this midpoint of our lives where you start wrestling with that question of like, okay, well, what will provide for me the fulfillment that, and I'm not talking like spiritually speaking, I'm talking activity, vocationally.
Like a word out of The Witcher.
So what would provide for me fulfillment, satisfaction, direction, purpose? Is it actually the substance of what I'm doing? Spending my time doing X, spending my time doing Y? There's not a tremendous amount of personal fulfillment in saying I am a manager for an aerospace company. That is just my vocation. That is the role that I fulfill, and I do it to the best of my ability that I can, and I try to do it well. And as the scriptures would compel me to do, I try to do it as if I was doing it for the Lord, and sincerely believe that. I don't say that trivially. But is that the personal fulfillment? Is that the who I am and who I was designed to be? I don't know about that. And then you can say like, okay, well, is it finances? Is it financial position? So you acquire a certain degree of money or salary or something so that you can then go and do the things that you really want to do. Is that the position of it? Or is it that you abandon all of that for the sake of an individual work, like helping, this is so random, but or like helping blind people or feed the homeless or something like that? Is it that kind of vocation that you then enter into for that purpose, and charity work or something like that? And then is it maybe any of those individual ends that you embrace, not for the thing itself, but maybe somebody would be like, hey, I am on this career path because it provides me an avenue to provide for my family, and that is my purpose, and that is my calling. And all I'm trying to wrestle down in the midst of this is that RoboCop is about a man who was literally turned into a mechanism, and his struggle to reclaim his identity despite the mechanism. And that is something that resonates with me. And maybe there's not much more to say about it and about the how and the why, but that's a struggle that resonates profoundly with me. Is we are people who life will very quickly turn into a mechanism. You wake up, you go to work, you do the job, you come back, or whatever, rinse and repeat of the routine of day-to-day life. And the struggle is to reclaim the uniqueness, the
Inherent
identity,
dignity.
The inherent dignity is a great way to put that, of who we are, and to reclaim that and to live in that despite the mechanism. He doesn't get his body
what's
back,
interesting is something that's just kind of coming to me as you're trying to articulate that is he gets calcified into a singular role. There is you and I, you in management, me in sales, we can still take those hats off.
Right. That's
and
true. Yes.
and we would at least hope that we would be considered multifaceted in our identities, right? That there's there's Dr. Riedenstein, there's read the dad, read the father, read the dad, read the husband, read the worker. Like there's all these things, but what's interesting, and maybe what you're identifying in the film, is there is not an other. There is simply the singular role. Thus, he becomes a widget, just another component piece. And they need him to be that. He is their product. And that's do the sequels ever multiply the RoboCop? Like that feels like a low-hanging fruit from a narrative standpoint.
No, in fact, the plot of the second one begins with the notion that something about Murphy's unique characteristics are why it worked. It's a little bit the Steve Rogers super soldier stuff. It's like there's something about Murphy. They specifically say like he was this is not heavily mentioned in the first film, but his character is a devout Catholic with a profound sense of duty, and they said that sort of center that anchor in his personality made him uniquely equipped to adjust to the RoboCop dynamic, because they try making other RoboCops out of
so they do try
but they don't make them look the same. But when they try to do it, this is really dark. But when they try to do it, the moment they turn them online, they all kill themselves. They they rip themselves apart because they can't stand the shift in what's happened to them. And so anyway, but
so just out of curiosity, is the sequel antagonist or conflict rooted in just other humans trying to control him, or is it mechanized something or other?
Other mechanized things. Like one thing that they try to do to solve the problem of, well, we can't make other cops other things, is of course, sounds like a great idea. They use death row serial killers because they have this same sense of but they're want to try to pretend they can program that in a way that manipulates it and controls it to that end. So the ending of the second one is basically the abomination they've turned this killer into by mechanizing him, and RoboCop has to take him out. So there's that. But I feel like, and I know, we don't have to belabor this forever. We've been talking for a little while, so I really am interested in trying to, get to a place to where we can crest toward home. But I would be remiss without saying that there's also this element to RoboCop's story that these, the OCP in the film controls the cops. They control the narrative, they control the systems, they control the structures, and they need the cogs in the machine, the widgets, as you put it, to just fulfill their function. Just do what you need to do. And we've talked on this show X amount of times about algorithms. And like the way that human programming is being manipulated and leveraged to fulfill the algorithm, and we are in many ways the capital that is being leveraged or used to try to, you know, fulfill the product's need, you know, like, and whether that be, you know, Facebook, or whether that be, I mean, if anybody who's ever seen the show Mad Men understands the twisted ways in which people kind of try to develop ways to manipulate people into thinking this is what they've always wanted their whole life, you know. Go
So
ahead.
I was content to let this ship sail off into the distance, but you used the word algorithm, and it's staring at me a couple times here. So we don't have to spend a ton of time here, but it does feel like this is a strong word. It feels a bit irresponsible to not, you know, call out the elephant in the room, that of militarization of police forces, bias, racial bias in policing and whatnot. And
Yeah.
I'm coming back to your algorithm thing here, but it is interesting. So I was recently made aware. So what's interesting about Robocop is this confluence of technology and law enforcement. And, you know, with unless you're just sort of ignorant, it's hard to miss the escalating militarization of police forces, which statistically and, you know, by reveal of actual studies, you know, tend to find that militarized police units in the US are more frequently deployed to communities with large shares of African Americans. And take the militarization aspect, couple it with the technology aspect. Reed, I just listened to a podcast the other day that was just the things, and I say this like with hopefully some tenderness, but the things you and I don't have to think about are many. So right now, lots of big tech companies, Amazon, I don't think Facebook would be in this, but Google probably, are innovating these AI systems that are being sold to police forces and to cities and to, you know, municipalities and whatnot. Well, right now there's no, think like the FDA, there's no centralized regulatory system to ensure these things are working appropriately, because like Robocop, there is a certitude we apply to technology. Oh, well, it does what it's supposed to do. You create the computer, it's going to do the thing. Well, that is a bit of a misnomer when it is applied to algorithmic technology and machine learning, because I listened to a podcast recently, interview with a woman named Joy Bullum-Winnie, who did a TED talk about bias in artificial intelligence. And this stuff will kind of mess you up. Again, things you and I don't have to think about, because she's an MIT student, or former MIT student, now, you know, kind of researcher, African American, who started playing around as part of just a project for her MIT work, started playing around with some of these facial recognition software. And I'm cutting out a lot of stuff, but the data is fascinating. Statistically speaking, facial recognition, artificial intelligence, that is actively being sold to, so yeah, you say OCP, I say Amazon, to police forces and municipalities with minimal regulation attached to it, with the assumption that it's working correctly, misidentifies with tremendous frequency female and minority faces.
Oh, wow.
And it is becoming problematic. In this interview, she cites specifically a recent news story where a black man, I think is in the Midwest, is arrested in front of his child because cops have identified him from facial recognition software, and he's like, I'm not who you're looking for. They arrest him. He's held for 30 hours
Oh my
until, of
gosh.
course, he is learned to have not been the person thereafter. But so you have this marriage of law enforcement that has a strong historically checkered past, being married to technology that is faulty in in the execution of what it's designed to do.
Right.
And I know Robocop is this fun kind of fantasy story about a man stuck in a machine who's also a mall cop, but it yells to me of what we are doing with this unchecked I mean, the movie is about it. It's unchecked technology. It's
Yes.
untried. I mean, they assume its veracity. Again, you assume the certitude because it's Ed 209. Look at it. But then it goes wonky, or the Robocop that fails on them. And my question to you, Reed, was here at the end of our episode is, should we defund the police? That's a
Oh my gosh. And Mike dropping them out. And I'm going to follow it up with, now, you're dead.
Oof.
Wow.
And I'm joking about that question, but I do think that should be a going concern for people of conscience. Not defund the police, I don't mean that explicitly, but I mean reform, conscientiousness, mindfulness.
Right.
I'll cite it in one of our totems here at the Fear of God, or at least mine, and I think you would echo you, Brian Stevenson. He has this great interview from the New Yorker right after George Floyd's passing, and I'll cut out, there's a lot here, so it's really worth you looking up. Just search for the New Yorker, Brian Stevenson. He lists all these ways the history of law enforcement has been forced to right itself, but never apologized for the wrongs it did perpetrate. It was always compelled by the Union Army, by international pressure, by the federal courts, and that dynamic has meant there's no more remorse or regret or consciousness of wrongdoing. The police don't think they did anything wrong over the past 50 or 60 years. And so in that respect, we've created a culture that allows our police departments to see themselves as agents of control, and that culture has to shift. And this goes beyond the dynamics of race. This is the sentence that's worth remembering. We have created a culture where police officers think of themselves as warriors, not guardians. Now, add historically racially biased law enforcement, add to it racially biased technology, and bro, that's a bad recipe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Anyway,
no,
that's me in my soapbox. So sorry.
No, absolutely. And what I will say about that, because we are both interested in sort of landing the plane, is I think there's also a desensitization that the film shows. Did you catch in one of the media outlets where it said there was a mistake that like leveled Santa Barbara? Like there was somebody was aiming something and they aimed it wrong, and it literally like fired a bunch of missiles and leveled Santa Barbara. And then this is what the newscaster said with a half smile on their face, was just like, and it's to name them, just move right on down the line, and so there's a desensitizing that the film is also playing into. And the more we get numb, whether it be to, the inherent, that's why I say like not only mechanics, but also systems that can push us into losing our sense of who we are collectively. And that desensitization can push us into a position to where, like I said earlier, like you can be mostly machine and still find your humanity in the midst of that. You can be like those action stars that I mentioned earlier. You can be all human on the surface and mentally or spiritually or emotionally fed so much by the machine that you've lost complete sight of who you are. And the longer that you have played into the narrative, the longer that you have played, the longer that you have, like, that's why it's so important to be interrogating of the inputs that you just, like, the algorithm feeds you information that it thinks you're going to buy into and that it thinks you are going to be akin to and that you're going to embrace, and that's what you're going to be like. So the algorithm feeds you that data so much that you will stand there and demand and sort of stand upon the insistence of your humanity, all while you have been ship of Theseus into something else in your thinking and in your feeling and in your spiritual well-being. And that's what happens when all of these systems begin to, whether intentionally or not, begin to consort together against certain people groups, against certain cultural dynamics. And what I'm really just trying to say is that struggle that we all find, I believe there's a reason. Well, of course there was a reason, but, like, man, people talk about Jesus like he was some sort of political activist. He upended the politics of it mostly. This is a reductive way to contextualize Jesus's political presence. But in most of the ways, he was a political figure because he could not have appeared to care less about politics. Like, could not have cared less about fixing, or like upending those particular things that people were so concerned about, like, overthrowing Rome or all of that kind of thing. And I think the reason for that was because if we get back in touch with our fundamental and essential humanity, we will begin to subvert the system, even if we are still operating within it. Yeah. Because that's the thing. What I was about to say earlier, and I personally think I will wrap my thoughts up with this. Murphy doesn't get a new body, and he's never going to. He's never going to go back to being the Murphy he was pre-Robocop. And to that end, I am not saying anarchistically torpedo the system.
Nuke him.
Nuke him. I am saying you can there is hope that you can reconnect with the fundamentals of who you are, even if you find yourself to now be 95% machine. That is one of the on the surface metaphors that Robocop speaks to me about. He is 95% synthetic at this point and still got back in touch with his humanity. And those of us for whom the systems and the mechanisms feel just too daunting to unravel, you could be 90. I am saying that very deliberately. Like, part of the hope of what we believe as followers of Christ and as people who seek to constantly embrace our own humanity, you can be 95% machine, and there's still that grain of who you are that can shine forth in a way that can subvert the system just by its nature, just by the fact that you're you in the middle of it. And that's something that I wish we could all strive for, even more so. That seems to be more what Christ was interested in, is the individuals within it, and and recapturing the individuals and reclaiming what had died in them and bringing it back to life, far more so than, what we need is a plan to overthrow the system. It was more just, no, you reconnect with who you are. I see you, you see me. We reconnect with fundamentally who we were designed to be. And then even if we are way far, many iterations past that now, we can still be that in the midst of the places where we are. I hope that's making sense. But
well, you're you done good with your ship of Theseus. I like that. That's good.
Awesome. Well, you know what? What can I say? I was born yesterday. I think this is the moment for Robocop to get the fog treatment, unless
Indeed.
you have something more to say.
No, and people don't want me to. No.
Why don't you explain it?
Well, bias in police force I'm just kidding. He said, "Why don't you
Wow.
explain it?" And I was like, "I'm okay.
Wow.
I'll jump
Wow.
back in."
You're
Um,
dead.
Yeah. So the fog meter is our specific brand of it's our Roger and Ebert thumbs up or thumbs down.
It
We
is.
grade these films on a scale of fear and of God, how scary a thing is, how substantive a thing is. I will go first on fear. There's kind of a sliding scale in terms of what defines fearfulness or scariness in these movies. I do think it's not just violent, it is like viscera level violent,
Right.
body horror style violent.
Right.
So I think I will, on that basis, coupled with Toxie the Crusader, I think I'm gonna land on a 6.
Okay.
I'm gonna land on a 6.
6 feels right, and I'm going to join you with it for all the same reasons that you've said. I won't belabor the point, but yeah, it's like the violence is really strong and off-putting at times, but yeah. But what I would answer in addition to that is what I would balance it with the God factor or the substance meter. I think a lot of this film may be scratching at things that they didn't necessarily intend to scratch at, but a lot of it, they are being very deliberate. There's a lot of things just in the text of the film that you could point to, and you could unpack some other either social commentary, political commentary, human commentary. So I'm going to give it a 9 on the God factor. Yep.
I can see its energy being used to try to point particular directions. Nonetheless, I don't know that overall for me personally it kind of resonates
Sure
on the levels that it's aiming for. So I am going to go with my 6 for the God factor on Robocop.
Awesome. And that means that we give Robocop a 7 out of 10 on the fog meter.
That's still legit.
It is. It's quite legit.
It's
Dead
too
or
legit.
alive, you're coming with me. It's too legit to quit, actually.
Hey,
Hi. But now, honestly, would you recommend Robocop?
I feel like I'm breaking your heart to say I'm not sure that I would. I don't even like actively. I don't dislike the movie. I just don't quite like it enough to be like, yeah, check it out. But I want to apologize to you in the same
You
breath.
don't owe me anything. No,
I owe you a lot.
But you don't owe me.
I don't owe you this, but I owe you a lot.
Well, that's sweet of you to say, and likewise. But like in the context of this, no, you don't owe me, and I will. It is perfectly fine for you to say I don't know that I would recommend it, and for me then right after that to say, well, meanwhile I highly recommend it.
Yeah.
There's nothing wrong with that.
I am genuinely curious about the follow-up films, not because I think they're good, but just because I do like. Let me phrase it this way: I don't love the watching of RoboCop. I think it's a well-realized vision, and that I will stand with.
Yeah, and I can respect that and appreciate it. I will say, just point blank, part 2 is perfectly watchable. And if anybody like, you know what, I've never seen 2 and 3, and you're just like, I love RoboCop and would love more RoboCop in my life, sure, check out 2. It's fine. But it's all the things that you have mentioned are somewhat off-putting for you or cause you a little bit like loud, noisy, ultra-violent without sharp, clever script, biting satire, stuff like that. So just be aware of that. And it is a film, admittedly, you were about to apologize to me. It's a film, admittedly, that my level of esteem for it has been recent, and not recent as in like just the last couple of weeks. I mean, like within the last 5 or 6 years, something about this film has captured my imagination in ways that I think I touched on in this conversation. Maybe some further, maybe I will take the afterthoughts for this one and maybe try to further unpack the RoboCop-ness in all of that. So,
mine would just be, you're dead.
and that would be where it would stay.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Okay, but thank you sincerely for having this conversation with me, and thank you very much, Chase. Yes, and thank you very much, Chase, for recommending RoboCop to us. So next week,
thank you, Jacob, for giving us a hell of a good time.
We're going to be going back to
other.
episodes. Yes, exactly. We're going to be going back to episodes 3 and 4 of The Witcher next week. So keep up to that. Also next week, we're going to be going to yet another What Scares Us entry. And we're going to be possibly having another guest. We'll see. But we are going to a film that I'm very excited for you to see. Very excited. Yeah, very excited for you to see, just to see how you're going to react to it. I've been waiting for this since we started the show. But next week, we are going to the space horror where people,
I've seen this movie.
You've seen Event Horizon?
Yeah, I saw it in the theater.
Oh my gosh. Yes, I don't know why we've never talked about this. Well, let's talk about it next week, because I've never known that you saw Event Horizon.
Yeah.
I was waiting for us to get to Event Horizon, and we're getting to it next week. Lawrence Fishburne, Sam Neill, all that great stuff. But that's cool. Well, I can't wait to hear your thoughts about it, especially on a rewatch.
Since the theater, but yeah.
Sure. Yeah, that was 97. So yeah, that's been a long time. But wow. So but yeah, next week, everybody, episodes 3 and 4 of The Witcher and Event Horizon. Acquaint yourself with that. We will see you next week. And as we say on every episode, the fear of God is the beginning of wisdom, but not the end of the conversation. And in that spirit, we encourage you to fear nothing else and be on your way rejoicing. We'll see you next week, everybody.
See you guys. Hello, welcome back to your favorite podcast. I'm going to do that again. That was way too big of a hello. I was like, whoa. Hello.